Susan Straight, I met, like, for the first time, I think, last year in person. But we have been corresponding for a few years, and she became a really amazing champion of my work. You need that when you're a writer who can't get your book published at all. So you need the voices that are not the voices in your head saying, this is never going to work. And Susan became that great champion for me. So it's with great delight that I have her here at the festival. So please welcome Susan Straight.
Those are 3 very tough acts to follow, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it's hard to be the last one when the first 3 were so good. It's really an honor to read here, but I also just want to say, just this whole idea of mixed roots and literature and film, it means a lot to us. It does, as writers, because I've been writing, well, I just turned 50, and I've been writing since I was 16. And I always was writing about people of mixed race, but kind of, because I'm from Riverside, which everyone was mixed race almost, it seemed as if I wrote for myself. And I come to think of Ernest J. Gaines' great quote. He was born in rural Louisiana, and then when he got to San Francisco, to Vallejo, he went to the library. And he said, I realized I didn't see my people in the library. And so that's why I became a writer. So I think that maybe it's interesting to point out that I think this is a great place, because that's kind of how you felt. Like, I don't see my people in literature, and that's why I'm writing about them. So anyway, thanks for inviting me. It's also really nice for me because sometimes I go places and people are, oh, you're this blonde woman and what are you writing about? So Riverside was a really fascinating place to grow up. I still live 3 blocks from where I was born. And I met a guy in the 8th grade, and then I married him, and I already know how sad that is, so you don't need to tell me, because we have 3 girls, and I hear it all the time. Why would you marry someone you met in the 8th grade? That's really dumb. Anyway, so when I started this particular project, I'm just finishing the 3rd book, that's really the first time I thought I would take American history on, in a way. And so I wrote this first book, A Million Nightingales, based on just these little phrases that had stuck in my head during all this time of my married life. I was at a family reunion. Our family is huge in Riverside, and the people come from all over, and there'll be like 400 people at Riverside's Fairmount Park. And I'm always the only blonde person, and that's all right. And I remember being only 18 and hearing somebody say behind me, well, how did y'all get to California? And it was my father-in-law talking to someone who was from Louisiana. And this man behind me said, well, you know, I had this beautiful daughter. And one weekend, Mr. So-and-so, this man that owned the land that they worked on, sugarcane, he was going to come get her. So we had to leave. So we packed up that night, and we had cousins out here in Riverside. And I remember turning around and looking at him and thinking, wow, that didn't happen like in 1915. That happened in 1950. So that phrase stayed with me. And then I looked at my own children, my own 3 girls, and you know, they have all different hair and all different skin tones, but there was this notion that Heidi and other women and I have talked about where, you know, you're mixed and so you're pretty and so people see you as almost an object or people objectify you. Those are the little things that you start thinking of, but for me as a fiction writer, really it's all about story. So I'm going to read you from this book, a little tiny piece, and then from my new book. So I started out with this book and I couldn't figure out why the mother and the daughter kept fighting, and I had to go all the way back to slavery to figure out why this mother was so protective of her daughter. So this book is set on a plantation south of New Orleans. It's not New Orleans, but it's Plaquemine Parish, which turns out to be the place that got decimated by Hurricane Katrina, the place where it actually made landfall. And I was writing this book about really this young girl who's very beautiful and doesn't fit in anywhere. So her mother is from Senegal. Her mother came over at 5 on the boat. And her father basically was a man who came by for a week and got to sleep with the mother when she was 16. So Monette is a gift. She's a gift child. She just showed up. She's the product of that reunion. And it's funny because her name came from a former student of mine at Job Corps. I used to teach at Inland Empire Job Corps. I taught GED classes, and I had this amazing student named Monette. She already had 2 kids, and she was from Oakland, and she was 18, and she was so smart, so I always said I was going to name a character after her. So I'm going to read you this little tiny piece. This is how this mother feels about her daughter. She's always afraid to go to sleep at night because she's afraid someone is going to steal her child. We lived between. Le Quartier was one long street, houses lining the dirt road to the cane fields and the sugar house, but a grove of pecan trees separated the street from the Bordelon's house. Tréty, the cook, lived in the kitchen behind the house. Non Pierre, the groom, lived in the barn. But my mother's house was in a clearing near 3 pecan trees at the edge of the cane fields. A path led from the main road to our yard. Madame Bordelon could see us from her second-floor gallery. She could see what color clothes we hung or whether we had washed the table linens, but she couldn't hear what we said. Under the trees, my mother spoke to me every day, but only when she had something to teach me, and only when we were alone. When I was young, I asked her the same thing many times until I understood. Ma mère, I said. Oui, she said. Who do I belong to? Me. My mother never hesitated. You are mine. No one else? No. Not Monsieur? No. Not God? Then my mother would pause. We were making soap, and I watched her pour another dipper of water onto the wood ashes held in a trough over the big pot. The gray sludge dripped into the boiling water, and my mother said, no. She stirred the lye water, and I knew to stay away, because one flying drop could burn the skin, brown to pink, pink and shiny rays as mother-of-pearl buttons on my mother's forearm, like she had sewn them to her own skin, as if she had finished mending the Bordelon's clothes, and then decided to decorate herself. No. My mother's voice rushed from her throat, harsh as if she were chewing coffee beans. Here on earth, you belong to me. If you died, then you would belong to God. Là-bas. She lifted her chin to the sky above the pecan trees, and she said, eh bien, I would die too, because I would need to be gone with you. Gone, I said. There, not here, with you. I wouldn't look up. I didn't want to see that sky. I said, God would kill you too, because you let me die? No. My mother's eyes were fierce and slitted under the tignon, the cloth that covered her hair and forehead. It slipped up, and a stripe of gleaming, undusted skin showed above her brows. God will not kill you or me. My work here is to keep you alive, she said. I believed her. I was all my mother cared about, except for the coffee she loved so much. She hoarded the beans inside a special tin in our room. Slaves weren't allowed to have coffee. She counted the beans during the night before she came to sleep when she thought my eyes were closed. But before she held them under her nose with her palm flat, her nostrils almost touching the dark beans, my mother prayed, and I listened. She lit 2 small candles. One she kept hidden because we weren't supposed to have candles either. She made them for herself when we dipped all the other candles for the Bordelon family. She poured a sip of the day's coffee into a tiny blue dish on the washstand. She laid 1 bean on a piece of cloth so blue it was almost black. She put 1 gold coin on the cloth too, and a circle of my hair braided like a bracelet. She would glance back at me, and I kept my eyes closed. My mother prayed in French, and African words crept in, words I knew she had learned from her mother, but words she never said to me. She prayed every night to all the gods of water and earth, to God above, mon Dieu, that I would be healthy in the morning, alive all day, and protected until the next night when she would ask again. When she was finished, she blew out the candles and laid them on their sides next to our wooden plates, and they looked so cold and small. Then she put them with the cloth scrap, the bracelet of hair, and the coin in a pouch inside the kitchen safe, where we kept our spoon and our cup. If anyone ever came looking, they wouldn't think that collection of things was special to anyone. They might take the gold coin, but they wouldn't know the rest was my mother's church.